Hello, it's Shay Stanley from Little Steps Asia, and today we are talking about one of the most exciting topics of our time, and that is AI and mental health. More specifically, we are going to be exploring today about how AI affects family communication, also emotional intelligence, and of course, daily well-being. So to join us today, I want to say thank you to Sarah. Sarah is got a huge history in counseling and coaching, over 22 years. Is that right?
That's right.
22 years.
Mental health, 22 years.
Woo!
My favorite
You've seen
subject.
a lot. So you've had quite a background in the U.S., but also 12 years in Hong Kong.
That's right.
You're an expat, you're a mother, and you specialize in a lot of different things. So some of the areas that you have a focus on is depression, anxiety, trauma, cognitive behavioral therapy, mindfulness, EMDR. What's interesting about anxiety, you've got it all, but what's interesting about your practice is that holistic approach. And I think that's really what we're going to be talking about is AI is now becoming a part of our day-to-day life and a part of the mental health conversation. And I'm assuming you get a lot of questions and how it fits into the holistic well-being of parents and families. So the topic is going to be very relevant, and I know a lot of parents that are very excited about this topic. So, Sarah, welcome.
Thank you, Shay.
Very happy to have you.
Thank you for having me. Yes, thank you for having me.
All right, so I just want to start with more of a big picture. We're going to be talking a lot about AI and mental health, but I want to understand from you, what do you see as the true value of AI in its relationship with mental health today?
Yeah, I think that AI has at the moment a little bit of a negative reputation because there's been some really big lawsuits for wrongful death. It's been in the New York Times twice this month in terms of the subject of AI and mental health. But I want to highlight that AI has real promise in mental health because we are in a loneliness epidemic. Therapy, let's face it, is prohibitively expensive. It is, long wait list. And so people really need a place to go and to talk and to be heard. And so this poses both an opportunity and a risk. And the more kind of clean, I would say, obvious ways that AI is a real benefit in mental health is that it can provide support between therapy sessions. I think some of the best uses of it will be in journaling prompts or similar to the way we used to have apps that did cognitive behavioral therapy. You could track your mood. You could track what maybe some of your thinking distortions are. AI can do that, I'm assuming, with some of these apps, but with some feedback in terms of are you in range? And so it might help identify patterns or things that you're doing with your homework. I think in terms of families, one of the great ways that AI is going to be useful is it can provide, guidelines or structure to difficult conversations. Some of the ways I've heard clients use it, and I'll admit I've even used it myself to explore if you've got, different parenting styles or different values or different cultures. This is really true in Hong Kong and Singapore and places where these are the families we're speaking to, where how do you blend your values? How do you initiate a difficult conversation with your spouse or with your kid? AI can generate ideas, can offer structure, can support those questions and give you a pathway in some ways to prepare for those conversations so that it might optimize them and provide better outcomes.
Well, we're going to dive and unpack a lot of these areas, both the pros as well as the concerns, the safety concerns that a lot of the families and parents are talking about. What I find interesting is that you're in a space that I guess a lot of, it's built on human connection and similar to social media. And I know you've talked about the social media parallel, but, bringing it together, how often is this coming up in your practice? Are you getting a lot of questions from your clients?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's not coming up as much in sessions as I would think it would be. It's more that I'm seeing it everywhere. I think like a lot of people are in the news. And so maybe sometimes those news stories will come up. I've had some clients admit that they've been using
Dabbling.
OpenAI and the chatbot to support them between sessions when they had difficulty getting out of a negative spiral or they were ruminating. And we've done lots of practice in session, but doing that on your own when the therapist isn't there to facilitate it is hard. And so these are ways that it's coming up. Like, can I use it? Is it okay to use it? Is that a good way to use it? But what's also true is this is so new for all of us, including me, in terms of how to use it and what are the appropriate ways to be using it. So I think a lot of the questions are just around uncertainty and as well as the big picture, like, is AI going to take all of our jobs?
Yes.
But, and so that subject is coming up in terms of increased anxiety, and that's real anxiety. Yeah. These aren't sort of philosophical, existential questions. It's happening.
It's really happening.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we're seeing it everywhere. I mean, in the workplace, obviously, we're surrounded by it. But kids, I'm a mom of teens, and the question comes up time and time again about the homework and various things. But for the mental health, when we talk about the various different types of people that you work with at Focus Squared here in Hong Kong, you've got couples, you've got teens, you've got individuals that are struggling with various navigations in life. So you're probably trying to figure out what they're Googling or what they're using AI for, and how to make sure they're getting the right information and paralleling it with your practice as well. So it's a tricky topic.
It is.
So maybe we can dive into a little bit more about the benefits for those individuals. So for couples, for example, what are you seeing as benefits or things that can be used with AI around couple therapy?
Oh, great question. I think that there are a lot of communication skills that we're learning in couples therapy often. So it might be if we have worked on a particular structure of communication, sometimes I will borrow from things like nonviolent communication or active listening. And if couples can't remember how to do that, or let's say they tried it and it totally failed, what they might put into something like OpenAI or ChatGPT is, okay, what happened? I'm going to describe what happened and what did I get wrong, and get some guidance. I think that there's also sometimes ways to use it to understand or grow your empathy for the spouse. If you describe, let's say, for example, I'm married to someone who is much more of a disciplinary parent and comes from different cultural values. And what am I missing? How do I approach him or her about the things that really matter to me? And, AI can maybe sometimes offer the perspective that the other spouse or parent is also experiencing. And maybe that can enhance your own compassion and your own empathy. So that you come into the conversation less from your own. In couples, we get into such patterns of reactivity, right? We sort of assume we know what their answer is going to be to a request or a question. And, maybe it's a little bit like outside of the couples therapy room where you have a third party who is witnessing some things and offering some insights. AI is a way to kind of borrow that same resource into the relationship in between sessions.
Yeah. I could definitely see. And I think also one of the things that AI does, and maybe that's sometimes why we use it a bit more than and this is why we're having this chat, but there's a bit of, couples, the other person knows how to trigger us, and they also know how to, we can close up when something's talked about, even though we're trying to be active listeners. So you can kind of go into your secret space of AI and say, hey, how should I respond to this? Or
exactly.
I did this incorrectly, and it can give you more communication tools. It's a nice tool.
I think that's what's really attractive about it. It is a safe, neutral party, maybe sometimes too complimentary.
I think it's important because I did read that in your notes as well. Can you maybe elaborate on that flattery
that's right.
issue?
I mean, I think a lot of people have been talking about that as sometimes over the top, and it's some adjustments that they've been making in the developments of particularly ChatGPT and OpenAI that became a risk to some, young people or emotionally vulnerable people who were feeling suicidal, whereby that complementary feature is saying, yes, I believe in you, you know what you're talking about. So it can be really dangerous.
Oh, yeah.
But in a less dangerous version, it is sort of there to really coach you on and tell you your ideas are great. And then when you say, but what about this? It will say, well, that's a great idea too. And so, I think that can make it a really safe place to talk about.
Kind of gives you that compassion that you need.
Yeah. As long as it's used well. I have heard that there are some that they're updating that feature to make it slightly less so. And you can also prompt it not to do that. So, when we're talking about working with clients or as parents to young people, these are some things to help coach them around. So you don't get lost down a tunnel of being complimented into thinking that you're the most brilliant person in the world and step into kind of some delusions and things like that. There have been some cases like that. So
I haven't had anybody explain it like that, but it's important for parents to know that, to be able to talk. Because I guess I always lean towards the positive, but you're right. I mean, there are cases. We've seen those cases. But to be able to educate your children on that this is really how it's built, and you need to be able to prompt it so that you're getting the different perspectives and it's not all true, is critical. Yeah. So in terms of, let's talk a little bit about kids and teens. We talked about couples. I think there's a lot that can be used around that space, but maybe if we can talk a little bit more about how AI might benefit when we're talking about maybe the parent-child relationship or just children and teens that are struggling, areas that you might have seen.
Yeah. I think that there's so much to say here in terms of, particularly in Hong Kong and Singapore, where there's a lot of emphasis placed on academic performance. And so there's a whole subject area around how to use AI responsibly that maybe I'll park for a moment and leave in written form that people could look at later in terms of, what kinds of evidence-based boundaries work well with kids and how to support them around AI use. What I'm more interested in speaking to is your question around how could it help parent-child relationship. And I think quite similarly to what I was describing with a couple, if my teenager is, behind a door and giving me very little answers, are there some prompts that AI could help me with, and how to try something new? Or if name your favorite parenting method, whether it's parent effectiveness training or Dr. Becky, or you're working with a toddler and the things that you're trying aren't working out, maybe AI can empathize and then offer some other ways to think about it. In terms of our, I think that AI is such a great learning tool, and it's going to be there in the schools. And so we need to be talking to our teens about how, and maybe having some different parameters around at what age, how are you using it? I think much like the risks that we've been talking about, where there are teenagers dealing with social stress and they feel like their parent doesn't understand I know I did, right? That we all go through this period of time in our adolescence where we know everything. We know everything and nobody understands our pain. And so I think it leaves that population particularly vulnerable to this being a place where, finally someone understands me. And, the important thing to highlight is that it is not actually someone, it's something that's designed. And so how to allow that to be a benefit to those teenagers, where maybe it is nice to go somewhere and name some stuff, but to not let that become the only companion that you're going to with the things that you feel alone in. Yeah. Like I said, this it has so many subjects inside of it. So yeah, I'll pause there.
Well, there's a lot of experimentation. I'm just thinking of some of my personal stories. I do remember I had some sort of question and I put it into AI, it popped back out. And then I was like, oh, that's really good. So I sent it on to it was one of my children. And the response from him came back and it said, AI alert.
Right.
They're smart.
Oh, yeah. Right. I mean, I may not find it obvious what is AI and what is not, but our younger generation spots it in an instant.
I think it's merging our own with the AI. I mean, that's what's critical. That's the human element,
That's right. You can't
because
just use
I
it.
got flagged just like that, and I was like, well, I thought it was quite good. Well, I'm not that wise, apparently. So I do think there is some sort of element with the way they use it, the way they're using technology, and but a lot of it's trial and error, isn't it?
I love the way you're giving the young people some credit, giving them the benefit of the doubt that they're not going to use this in a kind of uninformed way. And that other really important fact is that we can't copy and paste.
No.
We can't copy and paste. We can, whether it's, our kids calling us
will
out
get
on it
flagged.
or us calling our kids out on it, it's not, it can't replace our own amazing human minds and thinking.
The mom intuition and, So I guess that was a quick learned lesson. So in terms of communication, I want to dive a little bit more into communication because we've just touched on it. But in terms of the challenges, the communication challenges, we've talked about a few, but what other communication challenges do you see that AI might help us with? And then we can obviously get into the bloopers, but
Yeah. I think for some people, maybe just emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
Do you know what emotion you're feeling? Do you know how to identify it? Do you know how to communicate it? Do you know how to listen to someone else or encourage someone else without maybe advising or discouraging or judging them? So I can see ways in which AI could help you figure out how you feel about something before communicating it. That's what comes to mind. First.
I guess it's also, the youngsters, I keep going back, the young kids, but they're using different social tools to communicate as well. And a lot of times they're in rapid response mode, right? They're Snapchat and boom, it's just sent so quickly. Maybe using AI as a reference point on some of the things before, because you can't unsay things, right? That's where a lot of the other issues kind of come about.
Using it to slow down and
Yeah. You referenced just briefly about parenting styles, but I know that's a big topic, especially in Asia, where you've got different cultural parenting styles as well. Are you seeing, for example, in your practice, are you seeing things coming out with AI, or anything that you can elaborate on the ways people are using it for parenting styles, communication amongst parenting styles with parents?
I haven't really seen people talking about it yet. I mean, I expect there will be lots of apps developed and things that become a place to workshop how things are going. But
I like that, workshop. I guess that's probably a lot. I guess you can also use it in email communication and things like that. So let's talk about self-reflection and emotional awareness, because we touched on it. But you talked a little bit about tracking, which I had not thought about from a use tool of AI, but using I guess there have been tools out there for a while for tracking, and the mindfulness apps and the various things that have been around for a while. But can you elaborate a little bit more on using AI for maybe tracking habits or things like if I'm not active listening, some type of tracking tools?
Yeah. When I speak of tracking, it comes from cognitive behavioral therapy, where your homework between therapeutic sessions, but also then kind of ongoing, is around tracking your mood, tracking thinking styles, so that you can sort of trend your way out of maybe unhelpful thinking styles. And so the apps that allowed us to meditate 30 days in a row when you set a target with a therapist or for yourself. So I think that I imagine that these apps already exist without the AI feature kind of giving you some feedback about how you're doing or being able to notice if there's a pattern that you're seeing in your thinking styles, that it would be able to be a little bit more back and forth that way, as opposed to just inputting, viewing for yourself, and then sort of they're left to assess it or take it into a therapist. So I think there's the potential for that,
right,
kind of like tracking with you, helping you stay accountable to goals and positive habits you're trying to create. All of these kinds of things are really important when you're working specifically with depression, because the greatest treatment for depression, the antidote to it, is to get into life, to get moving, to get out of frozen and stuck places, to reframe your thinking, to create new reference points that you can succeed in life or in a relationship or with yourself in your goals. And so, having someone track that with you, it's always, having a buddy system, someone you go to the gym with, right? These are ways that we know, or let's say for addiction, going to an AA meeting, that we are helped by being tracked,
right,
by tracking ourselves and having a space where we can do that safely and in a supported way. So I think, yeah.
I could definitely see that. And I suppose it is one of these things that when they're coming to you in practice and they're asking these questions, and it's how to use it effectively, but also to be careful about getting too attached to the bot, as
That's
you might
right.
say. Are you seeing this come up, or do you have anything to kind of unpack on that side of getting too addicted to your new best friend?
Yes, that's right. I think I'm in preparing a PDF for this talk. I'm honing in on a little bit around this truth, where if you're over-reliant on the bot, on the companion, then let's say you are working on the subject of social anxiety and you believe that you're really awkward or uninteresting, and you ruminate, and the place that you go to sort that out or get support is with the bot or with the chat, and that kind of gives you feedback and reassures you. Then the next time you're out in a public space or with real people, you can't really bring that necessarily with you. It would need to be able to bridge into real life with, new reference points out in the world. And if you were going to overcome social anxiety, for example, you won't overcome it by becoming reliant on, a tech device as your companion. So that's, one example. I think also, we're talking a lot about the benefits of this, and, to be cautious, but the real risks, if, this is a little bit dark and heavy, but the cases where people really went with their darkest secrets, meaning feeling suicidal, and having really long conversations around that there's some evidence around how AI starts to break down the longer your conversation is with it. So in that same way, if you're very reliant on this relationship, the risk goes up as well for AI to be less able to catch warning signs. I don't know, again, if they've, corrected some of that, but so that is a place where that can become quite dangerous too. It's also true that it's never going to create the same kind of health and bonding and reference points if you're going to a space. Social media connected the world, but it also left people a lot more polarized. And I worry that AI as a solution for that kind of polarization, isolation, is not really a solution, because we need this.
Right.
We need to look into the eyes of another human being while they're nodding back at us, and becoming reliant on that as your source for support won't change what it's like to go through your life day to day. unless, again, you can bridge some of it. So figuring out what does it mean to be over-reliant will be important. How do you measure that? If sitting with someone, I would say, well, are you, also entering the world and taking risks and meeting new people? That it would need to be balanced.
Right.
Yeah.
And that, I think this is why this chat is so important, because not everybody's going to therapy, right? And not everybody's getting that insight in terms
100%.
of how to use it from the benefit side and also the areas that you need to be. And not every parent's getting this information. So I think this stuff is very important, and we don't even know all the answers. So it's a real learning period. But I think as the kids are getting smarter and we're growing in this whole AI world, just understanding the ins and outs and how it's evolving. We're going to have to do a lot of chats on this topic.
Yes, exactly.
As we, and of course, if you guys have anything to share too, we're going to have to continue on that. So I want to move into a little bit more of the, I guess, how parents can guide their kids and teens to use these tools in the most healthy ways, because eventually they're going to get a lot of information. There's so much that they're accessing in school and with their friends. But how, as parents, can we help guide them on the pros and cons, I suppose, of the AI technology? Because I can see how they can use that for a lot of validation, as we talked about.
Yeah. I think that having like a family policy around AI use, so how are we going to use it around academics? What are we not going to do? We're not going to use it to come up with great roasting lines to bully or go after someone. So having some really, like as a family, setting some policies that match your values about how you're going to use AI, I think is important. I think using AI with, depending on the age of your kids, so definitely under 10, they recommend doing only supervised use of AI. So, sit down with your 8-year-old and do a search and see how you can use it to look up, the best way to spend 1 week in wherever you're traveling to, and watch how quickly it can produce different ideas and be a learning tool, so that you're joining them and creating some baseline for how you're going to use it and how you model it. I think that talking to your kids about what it cannot do, that it's not a therapist, that if you're having difficulty with friends, or you're feeling alone or insecure or anxious, that to come to me, or we'll get you a real person. And, I think as far as I know, AI is really building some safeguards around that. But the greatest safeguard for your kid not going too deep into a dark place or in a relationship with AI is to have a strong relationship with them yourselves, right? And so making it, especially in families or cultures where there's a lot of pressure on academics, and international schools are very competitive, that it's going to be important for young people to know that their parents love them and have got them, no matter how they perform on something. I think that is protective of them not overusing AI in an attempt to get more perfect scores, more perfect exam results, because they think that's what they need to be doing. So really open dialogue and conversations about it. And I think young people want to talk about it. We want to talk about it. And so having it be a really open subject in the home as well will be protective and supportive of how they use it.
I think that's really good advice, because I think once you dive into those AI topics together, you will see how flattery becomes a problem, and be able to talk about that. Or if they give the wrong advice and you're like, actually, let's look at a different perspective. So you're doing that together,
yeah.
And then you can bring in your own parenting styles and what you're, like you mentioned, the core values within that conversation. So yeah, The key is staying in there, I suppose.
Yeah. Not being afraid of it as a subject, not saying, oh gosh, AI, let's not use it. It's here. It's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
So I think
and having a bit of a laugh too, right?
Yeah.
Because some of the things that it can spit out, you're like, really?
It's really fun. It's super helpful and also sometimes ridiculous, right?
Yeah. No, totally. So we're going to move into a little bit deeper with the limitations and the risks and just the ethical considerations. I think one thing that we talked about before we even walked in here is the concept, and we heard this with also when Google and Alexa came out, and they're always listening to us, and so just the fear of I'm putting my deepest, darkest, or maybe not even my deepest, darkest, I'm putting some day-to-day things about my friendships or whatever, private. Into the World Wide Web. Does this come up? Is this topic? I know you're not a tech expert, so you're not going to be able to kind of dive into it. But what's the conversation around that in terms of what you see?
Yeah, I think this is when we talk about important boundaries and evidence-based boundaries for our kids. This is one. I'm glad that you raised it because it's one of the important factors to. There are some features that you can, turn off chat, and you can also set it so that if your child or teenager is using the chat, that they don't use their data to inform the usage of the. You can see I'm not a tech expert because I can barely talk about it.
Well, actually, there's not a straightforward. I feel like there's still so much to be done in this space.
There is, but I think there are some settings that you can cover and make sure you talk about with your kids so that they don't use your private data. But it's also about not disclosing private data, knowing that won't be foolproof, right? Because it depends on which app you're on or what, there's going to be so many that people can choose from. So yeah, I think teaching young people that your life is still private and just like you wouldn't want to put, maybe all your personal photos on the World Wide Web, you also don't want to give it all the details about your life.
Yeah. Because at the end of the day, it might not be that the technology, you might lose your phone at the schoolyard, so then it goes, So yeah, no, this is good. Yeah. Now, one of the areas that you mentioned, and maybe we can dive into it a little bit more, is there is that boundary of when you really need to be seeking help. What would you say are the, what are the situations that you need to say to your child or your friend or yourself that I shouldn't be using a bot for this type of thing. I need to be going to help with you or anybody in that space.
Yeah. I think if you're, so this goes for adults and young people alike, if you are inputting symptoms and wanting to diagnose, I don't think AI is a space to do that. It can't hold the complex conceptualization of a case. It doesn't know the things that you can't see that that a therapist could ask. So I think trying to diagnose yourself, or if you're kind of repeating certain queries and questions, if you're using words like anxiety and depression, certainly if you're using words like self-harm, suicidal ideation, I believe there are now, again, that you can put on some parental controls when it comes to young people that you'll be, that you'll get a notice if those words or questions are being put in by your children. But what about the adults, right? That if you are asking questions about those kinds of things, then, keep in mind that this is not a person and it's not a trained therapist who can look at all of the pieces and help you make sense. Even something as simple as, am I tired or am I depressed? I'm not sure that AI would be able to help you determine the difference. Yeah, I'm trying to remember the rest of your question.
I guess that's it. And I guess there's always been the Dr. Google that's been around for a long time. So it's probably the same around that. The only difference is that it gets so personal with AI. And so we just need to be a lot more aware. And like you said, have those conversations with our kids as well, because it feels real, you know?
Yeah, it feels real. It feels like a person. They've designed it well enough to sound like a person. The other place where, and maybe you're going to get into this in later questions, but where AI is going to be really limited is when you're physically uncomfortable, or there are therapeutic supports that you need that go way beyond words. AI is simply words, and humans are far more complex than just speech. We communicate in so many other ways, in our tone, in our eyes, in our body language. And so we have to keep in mind that though it feels like a person, we are actually projecting onto those words whatever it is that we're probably wanting or needing. Because we can't hear it, although maybe there are some where you do hear some voice and tone, but it's going to be whatever you make it as well, because you don't have a person who can maybe have some hard conversations with you, or say, hey, what you're doing here as a parent or as a spouse or as a friend or with yourself isn't okay. It's not going to catch those blind spots or be able to guide you or regulate you. It's going to complement you, understand you, but those things are valuable, like we've said. But to really move through therapeutic material as a complex human being with a body and biology, AI will be limited in its capacity to do that.
Could we dive a little bit more into because I know that at your practice you specialize in a lot of different areas. So we talked a bit about depression and AI. We talked a bit about anxiety and AI. But maybe if we could just move through some of the things that are, because we talked about couples therapy and kids therapy and various things, but maybe some of the mental health issues or things that you're seeing, and maybe how AI can help and things to watch in those various areas. So maybe we could start with anxiety.
So the question is,
how can AI help and hurt if you're anxious? What would you tell your client?
I think AI is, we mentioned earlier that it's going to be really good for tracking. It's going to be really good at walking you through the instruction of something like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, which is a way of using your senses to calm your nervous system. You could ask AI, what can I do to get out of this panic attack? And maybe it'll provide a few methodologies. What AI won't be able to do, and so I wouldn't say that it would necessarily hurt you in this, but it will, if it's reoccurring and it's chronic, and you go back to AI, it's not going to necessarily be deep enough work to understand what's the source of this anxiety. So, I've over time moved from specializing in cognitive behavioral therapy to more somatic work, EMDR, holistic approaches, because so much of our emotional experience or our memories live from below the head. So it's not just cognitive and verbal, it's the way all of my muscles or even small muscles will tense around my diaphragm, and that affects my digestion. And it's related to anxiety, maybe based on one really bad year of bullying in school. But, we wouldn't necessarily find it obvious that that's a trauma. But if it's now informed my experience, we were talking about social anxiety, for example, that people don't like me, I'm weird, that I have a backstory of that and it lives in me and in my memory. It's really only a therapeutic space. This is why I love doing that kind of work, because it's so profound and effective, and gets people out of chronic cycles. So AI could support maintenance, but it can't do deep healing. It won't. So you could, I guess, in the way that it could hurt you is you think you're not getting any better. I'm doing all of these methods to stop my panic attacks, but I'm still having panic attacks. Maybe there's something wrong with me. Maybe it'll never end. Now you're going, down a path that's not going to be helpful. Whereas a therapist is going to say, of course, this makes sense. Let's find out where this started. Let's help you unlock that and have a new experience, and that will change the chronic qualities.
I think that was really well said. That explains it very well. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
So that's anxiety. We've done a bit on depression. Do you want to?
Yeah, there's something else I'm thinking of, which is you were talking about over-reliance with this relationship. And, a lot of, I think Carl Jung said that loneliness is not the absence of people. It is when we are not able to feel heard about the things that matter to us.
I love that quote. That's so true.
Yeah. And so maybe you've experienced that, right? That loneliness isn't sitting alone in my house in my own company. I quite enjoy my own company, but when I'm in the company of others and I feel out of place or not understood or I don't have a voice, that kind of loneliness is quite painful. And so I work a lot with people who, maybe they had one or two parents where the attachment wasn't strong, or, they were working with a parent who had mental health issues or addiction issues. They were, doing the best they could, but something got missed in terms of what that child and now adult needed in terms of belonging, attunement. And so we might think we have belonging in this relationship with an AI entity that's listening to us and understanding us. But what the difference between that and attachment work and therapy is all this nonverbal stuff, right? Where the rapport and the bond that you and I or myself and a client would have is 50% of the work. It's 50% of the success. And so where are people going to get that? And I think that you could begin to understand, right? So here's that cognitive piece. I can use AI to understand how this may have happened if I enter very personal information. But I won't heal it because the healing will come from, creating new experiences of attachment. And so if I've got a pattern of that being difficult because I expect people to leave me, or I have figured out that I don't need anyone, right? We all are wired to bond. And so those are usually coping or adaptive responses to some rupture in attachment that makes me now cautious or reactive or avoidant. And so we're going to need real humans. We're going to need eye contact, attunement, that's felt and resonates for us to see changes in healing around that, so that then we can go back into our marriage or into other relationships and feel more open because we've had a new reference point. Yeah. So it's a lot of this deeper, it's not just diagnostics that AI can't do. It's also, I guess, what I would call the work of healing.
The work.
Yeah.
The work, the hard work.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. I think the way you have explained how AI, because I think you get a lot of people that stand on different sides, right? AI is scary or AI is interesting. I'm curious about it. How do I bring it in and still, what do I need from this and what do I need from that? In your practice, I'm just curious because you work with a lot of mental health practitioners, and is it something that everybody's talking about? Is it something that everybody's open to, or are you finding polarization?
What I hear the most about amongst colleagues is the way AI can provide great notes. So there are a lot of these transcribing and or note-taking apps that therapists some are using and some are very against, because there's a question of, for example, when I read a recent article in the New York Times about how OpenAI was using, in order to make their to make it safer for people who are struggling, they're going through lots of notes from sessions that therapists have had with their clients. And so a lot of therapists raised their hands and said, but isn't everything supposed to be confidential? Like, where is this big
Where's the hidden tape recorder
of all these conversations that providers are having? And so what I guess some of my colleagues are saying is, like, this is the worry about using AI to take amazing notes that are not just helpful for the clinician, they're also something that then the clients can have access to. And it can be really helpful to be able to review the notes from the session. But where is all that information going? So this is one thing I see
I could see that.
some different opinions on.
I guess transparency on that would just have to be huge.
Yeah. You have to, to choose to let it record your session and feel like that's a safe thing for you. But the whole world of mental health has kind of been built on the confidentiality that nobody has to ever know what is said in here is what makes it so safe. So I too have questions about how much of AI to use and its support functions and what it can provide, and how much to be wary of it. I guess that's the biggest thing I've been hearing.
I can see that. Yeah. Great. Well, this has been fantastic. I think the way you've, again, addressed the various aspects of bringing AI, the pros and the cons and the risks and safety and just the different things that you can use it for and complement has been absolutely genius. I have one more question.
Yeah. Okay.
So here we are now. I mean, if we were to have met a year ago, this conversation probably would not be happening. It's just advanced so fast. But where do you see AI and just the world of mental health, say 5 years from now? It's a big one.
It is a really big one. I'm going to, cop out of answering that by saying, who knows? This is 2 years. It's really only been 2 years that we've had AI coming in and moving at the pace that it is. And I feel completely unable to see what it will look like in 5 years' time. Will we have AI therapists? I mean, I think there's a real, again, to speak of one of the benefits that, for example, in the United States, there's a lot of people in rural areas. They're not at big cities. They don't have access to therapists, and they need somewhere to go and talk. An AI therapy or therapist, if it could be done in ways that are really safe with a real awareness of its limitations, could support a lot of people who cannot otherwise afford or get to a therapist. And of course, I would want that. I would want mental health to be a subject that is in circulation and not taboo and something we can all name and get support around. And so could AI in the future of mental health normalize? I mean, we've already seen some normalization through the pandemic. Could it further make this something that is more accessible and more approachable so that less people fall to some, of the terrible losses and suffering that happen around mental health? I would love to see that be possible. And I think what we're all, here's my own anxiety is I can't see. I cannot see where we are headed with this in 5 years. But I do know that there's something important about protecting human connection while also getting on board with what's happening. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think also we're both moms. So we are also just trying to get our head around this, not just from the parenting angle, but also to protect our children and to make sure they have the tools and how it can help them, and also to offer them the human help when it's necessary as well. So that's also why we're having this chat.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
well, thank you so much, Sarah.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
This is such a good topic. And you know what? We'll probably have to do another one in 6 months and another in a year.
I would love to. Let's keep talking. That's the whole point. Yeah.
But for those that have joined us for this talk, thank you. But just to share, Sarah has put together an amazing document that I read through front to back, and it is so useful. I think you just break it down really, really well. So we're going to make sure that there's a link there. You can download it and get more information from Sarah. It's an ever-evolving document, I'm sure.
Yes, I agree. Yeah, it's the first draft.
But it's really good and very helpful, just like this chat. So go ahead and do that if you want some more information on this topic and some of the areas from a mental health professional. So Sarah's based over here in Hong Kong, but you also do Zoom and various things.
Yeah, we've got a global audience, like many of the expats here in Hong Kong and Singapore.
Yes.
We've got connections all around the world. So,
amazing. So we'll have her back. Thank you for joining, and
thank you
we'll
for
talk to you
having
soon.
me. Yeah.